A'ja Wilson just lost it completely, and what she said about Caitlin Clark has the entire basketball world in chaos. A bombshell report from Saudi Arabia's new basketball league just valued Caitlin Clark at 10 times more than any other WNBA player, including the reigning MVP herself, and Asia's response exposed something nobody saw coming. The numbers are so shocking that even Nike executives are scrambling to control the damage. This isn't just about money anymore. This is about the future of women's basketball and who really controls it. Before we dive into A'ja's meltdown, make sure to hit that like button if you think Caitlin Clark deserves every penny she's worth. The Saudi report didn't just throw around random numbers, they measured actual market value and influence. When those figures dropped, they revealed something the WNBA has been desperately trying to hide. Caitlin Clark isn't just valuable, she's literally carrying the entire league on her back. Her projected worth in the Saudi Women's League could hit $50 million per year, with global brands fighting to attach their names to hers. Meanwhile, A'ja Wilson, the three-time champion and current MVP, is watching her legacy get overshadowed by someone who's been in the league for less than 2 full seasons. But that wasn't the whole story, because what happened next completely changed everything. A'ja took to social media with a cryptic post that sent shockwaves through the basketball community. She wrote, quote, "What's delayed isn't denied," unquote. And while she didn't mention names, everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. The timing couldn't have been worse, because Nike had just announced their $28 million deal with Clark, the biggest endorsement in women's basketball history. Yet after all that fanfare, there's been radio silence. No signature shoe, no commercials, no major campaign rollout, just nothing, and that nothing started speaking volumes. The conspiracy theories started flying immediately. Insiders began whispering that Nike was terrified of the backlash they'd face if they gave a white sophomore her own shoe line before A'ja Wilson, who's been dominating the league for years. Sources close to the situation revealed Nike was actually delaying Clark's shoe launch until 2026 purely for optics. They didn't want to upset the established order of the WNBA, but by trying to please everyone, they ended up pleasing absolutely nobody. A'ja's frustration makes sense when you look at the history. She's been with Nike for years, earned multiple MVPs, led her team to championships, and still no signature shoe announcement until recently. What nobody expected was the international response to all this drama. European leagues started circling like sharks smelling blood in the water. The Saudi League wasn't just throwing around hypothetical numbers. They were ready to write checks that would make NBA players jealous. 50 million, 100 million, some reports even suggested they'd go as high as 200 million for someone like Caitlin Clark. The question isn't whether Clark would take it. The question is whether the WNBA can survive without her. Television ratings are up 300% since she entered the league. Her games average 1.2 million viewers, while games without her struggle to break 200,000. She's responsible for 26% of all WNBA economic activity and helped drive the league toward $1 billion in projected 2025 revenue. Then came the plot twist that nobody saw coming, and it completely flipped the narrative. After months of silence and speculation, Nike finally announced A'ja Wilson's signature shoe, the A1, set for release in 2025. Fans celebrated like it was vindication, finally justice for their MVP. But here's where it gets interesting. Leaked documents showed that A'ja had known about this deal for 2 full years. She'd been under a non-disclosure agreement the entire time, which means while fans were fighting her battles online, accusing Nike of favoritism and disrespect, A'ja already had her deal locked and loaded. The supposed rivalry, the anger, the outrage, it had all been fueled by rumors and bad timing, not actual snubs. But the damage was already done because by that point, Caitlin Clark had become something bigger than basketball. She wasn't just selling jerseys, she was selling out NBA arenas. The Indiana Fever's franchise value jumped from $90 million to $340 million in less than 2 years. Her return game peaked at 2.8 million viewers on ABC, one of the highest-rated WNBA games ever, and this was just a random regular season matchup. Clark's highlights were trending in multiple languages across social media platforms. Overseas fans were literally begging their local teams to sign her for the offseason. She'd transcended the sport itself, becoming a global phenomenon that the WNBA couldn't contain even if they wanted to. The real controversy started when people began comparing the actual impact of both players. A'ja Wilson might be the better traditional basketball player with her championships and accolades, but Caitlin Clark is undeniably the bigger star. It's like comparing Tim Duncan to Magic Johnson. One might have more rings, but the other changed the entire landscape of the sport. A'ja's defenders pushed back hard, saying she deserved equal treatment, that she's the foundation of the WNBA's success. They pointed to her defensive prowess, her consistency, her leadership, all valid points, but numbers don't lie, and the numbers all point to Clark being the most valuable asset women's basketball has ever seen. What happened next would shock everyone, including A'ja herself. The WNBA Finals completely imploded without Caitlin Clark's presence. Championship tickets were being sold for $6, and arenas looked half empty on television. The Las Vegas Aces versus Phoenix Mercury series became one of the lowest-rated finals in recent memory, proving what many suspected all along the league needs. Clark more than Clark needs the league. A'ja found herself in the awkward position of playing for a championship that fewer people cared about than a random fever regular season game. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, the MVP of the league playing in front of smaller crowds than the sophomore she'd been subtly criticizing. The situation got even more complicated when reports surfaced about the actual negotiations happening behind closed doors. The Saudi League wasn't just interested in Clark. They wanted to poach multiple WNBA stars and create their own Super League. But their valuation report made it clear Clark was worth more than the next 5 players combined. They viewed her as the cornerstone, the one player who could legitimize their entire operation overnight. Meanwhile, other international leagues in Europe and Asia were preparing their own massive offers. The WNBA suddenly found itself in a bidding war it couldn't possibly win, not with their current salary structure and revenue model. A'ja's response to all this revealed something deeper about the state of women's basketball. In a recent interview, she said, quote, "I've worked my entire life for this, and it feels like none of it matters," unquote. That raw honesty struck a chord because it highlighted the uncomfortable reality of modern sports. Talent alone doesn't determine value, marketability does. A'ja Wilson is arguably the most complete player in the WNBA today, but Caitlin Clark is the one filling arenas and driving television ratings. It's not fair, but it's reality, and that reality is reshaping everything about how we view women's sports. The controversy reached new heights when leaked emails showed WNBA executives discussing emergency measures to keep Clark in the league. They were considering rule changes, salary cap exceptions, anything to prevent her from taking an overseas offer. One executive allegedly wrote, quote, "Losing Clark would set us back 20 years, unquote. That desperation speaks volumes about where the power really lies. The league that once acted like Clark was just another rookie now treats her like she's holding their entire future hostage. And maybe she is, because without her drawing power, sponsors are already reconsidering their commitments. Nike's handling of the situation became its own scandal within the scandal. Internal sources revealed the company was so concerned about perception, they hired crisis management consultants to navigate the shoe release timeline. They wanted to avoid accusations of favoritism, while also capitalizing on Clark's massive popularity. The result was a public relations nightmare that satisfied nobody. A'ja felt disrespected despite having her deal secured. Clark's fans felt she was being held back for political reasons, and Nike looked like they were playing favorites no matter what they did. The whole mess exposed how unprepared major brands are for the new dynamics of women's sports, where social media can turn any decision into a controversy overnight. But here's what everyone's missing in this whole debate, and it's the most important part. This isn't really about Asia versus Caitlyn. It's about what happens when a sport finally gets the superstar it's been waiting for. The WNBA spent decades trying to find their Michael Jordan, their player who transcends the game and brings mainstream attention. They finally found her in Caitlin Clark, but instead of celebrating, some people, including Asia, are treating it like a threat to the established order. The old guard sees Clark's rapid rise as disrespectful to those who built the foundation. But progress doesn't wait for permission, and Clark's impact, whether people like it or not, is undeniable. The financial implications go way beyond just salaries and endorsements. Cities are now competing to host fever games, offering massive incentives because they know Clark brings economic impact. Hotels, restaurants, local businesses all see revenue spikes when she comes to town. One study estimated that a single Caitlin Clark game generates $3 to $5 million in local economic activity. That's NBA-level impact from a WNBA player, something that seemed impossible just 3 years ago. Asia Wilson, for all her greatness, doesn't move those kinds of numbers, and that's not a criticism, it's just economic reality. What makes this even more fascinating is how both players are handling the pressure. Clark has remained mostly silent, letting her performance do the talking, while Asia has become increasingly vocal about feeling undervalued. Some see Asia's comments as justified frustration, others view them as jealousy towards someone who achieved in 2 years what she couldn't in 7. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Asia has every right to feel frustrated about the disparity in attention, but Clark can't help that she connects with audiences in a way few athletes ever have. The international angle adds another layer of complexity because it's not just about money anymore. The Saudi League's interest in women's basketball represents a massive shift in global sports dynamics. They're not just buying players, they're buying influence and legitimacy. Having Caitlin Clark in their league would instantly make them relevant on the world stage. That kind of soft power is worth far more than $50 million to them, which is why they're willing to pay whatever it takes. Asia Wilson might be an MVP, but Clark is a revolution. And revolutions don't come cheap. Drop a comment below telling us who you think is really the most valuable player in women's basketball right now. Is it the proven champion or the game-changing phenomenon? The debate rages on, but one thing's certain, the WNBA will never be the same after this controversy. The league faces an impossible choice: embrace Clark as their centerpiece and risk alienating established stars like Asia, or try to maintain balance and potentially lose their biggest draw to international competition. There's no winning move here, only degrees of losing, and that reality is driving everyone involved absolutely crazy. The story took another wild turn when former players started weighing in. WNBA legends who built the league from nothing expressed mixed feelings about the situation. Some supported Asia, saying she represents everything the league stands for: hard work, dedication, excellence. Others sided with Clark, arguing that growing the game means embracing whoever can bring eyes to the sport regardless of tenure. The generational divide became obvious, with younger players generally supporting Clark while veterans backed Wilson. This split threatens to tear apart locker rooms across the league as players choose sides in a battle nobody really wins. As 2025 progresses, the situation only gets more intense. Clark's injury earlier this season proved what many feared: without her, the ratings crater and attendance plummets. The Fever went from selling out arenas to playing in front of half-empty crowds overnight. Meanwhile, Asia's Aces continued winning, but to smaller and smaller audiences. The contrast couldn't be more stark. One player wins games, the other wins hearts and wallets. Both are valuable, but in professional sports, money talks loudest. And right now, it's screaming Caitlin Clark's name. The Saudi League's patience won't last forever, and they're already making moves to create their Super League with or without WNBA cooperation. They've identified their targets with Clark at the top of the list, and they're prepared to offer contracts that would make her one of the highest-paid athletes in any sport. The WNBA's current maximum salary of around $250,000 looks like pocket change compared to what's being offered overseas. How can the league compete with that? The simple answer is they can't not, without completely restructuring their entire economic model. A'ja Wilson's legacy hangs in the balance because history remembers winners, but it celebrates icons. She might retire as the most decorated player in WNBA history, but will anyone remember if the league collapses after Clark leaves for international money? That's the cruel irony of this situation. A'ja needs Clark to keep the league relevant even as Clark's success diminishes A'ja's spotlight. It's a no-win scenario that's driving one of basketball's greatest players to public frustration and private desperation. The resolution to this drama won't come easy or soon. Nike will eventually release both signature shoes, but the damage to relationships is already done. The WNBA will try to keep Clark, but matching international offers might bankrupt them. A'ja will keep winning championships, but wondering if anyone's watching. And Caitlin Clark, well, she'll keep being Caitlin Clark. Transcendent talent meets perfect timing equals sports history in the making. The only question left is whether the WNBA will be part of that history or just a footnote in her journey to global domination. This controversy exposed uncomfortable truths about women's sports that nobody wanted to confront. Meritocracy doesn't guarantee marketability. Excellence doesn't ensure attention. And sometimes the best player isn't the most valuable player. A'ja Wilson learned that lesson the hard way, and her public frustration reflects a deeper anxiety about what values really matter in modern sports. Is it about pure basketball skill or entertainment value? Championship rings or social media engagement? The answer determines not just who gets the biggest contracts, but what the future of women's basketball looks like. As we head deeper into 2025, the stakes couldn't be higher. Every game, every quote, every social media post gets analyzed for signs of where this drama goes next. Will A'ja and Caitlin find a way to coexist as faces of the league? Can the WNBA evolve fast enough to keep its biggest star? Or will international money tear apart everything these women have built? The answers will shape women's sports for the next generation. One thing's absolutely certain, though. The days of the WNBA operating in peaceful obscurity are over forever. Caitlin Clark made sure of that, and A'ja Wilson knows it, even if she'll never admit it publicly.